Our next speaker is Todd Ross, Managing Director of Nordic Nickel.
Thank you very much. Good to see a few people in the audience still. Hopefully we won't hold you back too long. Nordic Nickel. Look, this is the second time we've had the opportunity to come and present at the Nickel conference. I've been an attendee of the conference for many, many years. As you mentioned before, previously wearing the hat as a banker, but now on the other side of the fence. When we presented last year, Nordic Nickel was 4 months old. And we've had a very busy year since then. We're talking and presenting today about Nordic Nickel exploring the world's newest major nickel sulphide district, and in particular our Pulu project, which we believe is a district-scale nickel sulphide project in the central Lapland greenstone belt of northern Finland. So our usual disclaimer to read at your leisure. So just a bit of a snapshot, again, just to remind people about Nordic Nickel. So we have 2 district-scale nickel copper projects or assets in the central Lapland greenstone belt of northern Finland. Great part of the world to operate in, and we've been there many times since we last presented at this conference now, and we're getting to know a lot of people there and understand how it all operates there. The Pulu project is capable of hosting both shallow, near-surface disseminated nickel mineralisation, but also high-grade massive sulphides. And we'll talk about some of the analogues that we represent in this area of the world. Within 6 weeks of listing last year, we were able to put out a maiden resource. So there were 51 holes drilled by Outokumpu back in the 80s and 90s on our tenements and on our main Hottenvara licence where we've been drilling this year. That resource was really drawing a line in the sand to say this is the nickel that's there, 133 million tonnes for 278,000 tonnes of contained nickel and 12,500 tonnes of contained cobalt. We've kicked off a 14-month drilling campaign, 22,000 metres. That started in January, and we accelerated that program on the basis of our selection into the Explore program with BHP, and I'll get onto that a bit more. We're looking to do an update on our mineral resource estimate by the end of the year, based on the new drilling that we've done, and we're kicking off a mineral processing study to understand what sort of concentrate we could potentially produce from the near-surface disseminated nickel, again, hoping to release that by the end of the year. We've got an exceptional pipeline of targets. We've just announced yesterday we've got a new exploration licence area that was granted to us, so that comes into the fold now. But our main exploration licence that we've been focused on is the Hottenvara licence. Confusingly now, the new licence that was granted is called Hottenvara. So we didn't want to change the names. We go with that, but we'll try and keep that distinction between the 2 areas, and I'll show you on the map where they are in a second. We've got a highly credentialed team. We've got both in Perth here, the likes of Jake Williams, who's joined us as Senior Exploration Geologist, but also Julian Hanna, who you all know very well. He's been in the nickel industry for a very long time, plus a team in Finland that we're building out now and looking to appoint a country manager. And as I mentioned just before, we were selected by BHP to participate in the inaugural BHP Explore program. So our strategy is to become, and this is a bold strategy, but to become a major supplier of sustainably sourced traceable Class 1 nickel sulphides in Finland. We believe that obviously, despite the conditions at the market at the moment, the demand for Class 1 nickel is well and truly in our favour, and it may not happen in the next 12 months, but it's certainly coming. And the more time I've spent in Europe, the more I realise how that's going to be a big issue. Securing supply, as I mentioned, in Europe is going to be critical. The EU released its Critical Minerals Act in March, where 10% of all raw materials, critical minerals, need to be sourced from Europe, and at the moment it's less than 1% that's actually coming from Europe. In addition, Finland is incentivising battery minerals and battery minerals projects. They've got a long mining history and a strong rule of law. We believe we're in good position to be able to participate in that. And then the central Lapland greenstone belt where we're operating is highly prospective for Class 1 nickel sulphides and other battery metals for that matter. And overall, Nordic Nickel has secured 515 square kilometres of ground in this area. And as mentioned, we've kicked off a 22,000 metre drilling campaign. So it's a bit more detail about the central Lapland greenstone belt and our 2 projects. So our flagship project is the Pulu project, which I'll spend most of the talk today focusing on. We have a second project called Manikiyoki 3, bit of a mouthful, but one of the opportunities for both of those projects were focused on Sakatti-style analogues. So Sakatti was a discovery that was made by Anglo American 10 years or so ago. It's been drilled out and recently had its EIA approved in Finland. A couple more hurdles for them to jump through, but Sakatti discovery was a game changer. Previously, we knew that there was a lot of disseminated nickel mineralisation within central Lapland. The Kevitsa mine, which is about 100 kilometres away, had been developed. Kevitsa is a large open pit nickel deposit that was first developed by First Quantum and now owned by Boliden. That was what people understood central Lapland to typically host. With the use of modern exploration methods and largely EM work that was done, or geophysics work that was done, the Anglo-American team were able to discover the Sakatti deposit. That was a game changer. Sakatti's 44 million tonnes, 1.9% copper and 1% nickel. That resource was released in 2016, and for 6 years straight they've had 6 rigs going on that, and they haven't updated the resource. You can join the dots there between that one and how big that's potentially going to be. We're operating about 100 kilometres away from Sakatti, and we're in the same ultramafic lithology, and we're looking for a similar style of mineralisation, and we're just getting started. So the Pulu Nickel Project. So Pulu is overall, it's about 240 square kilometres. We've kicked off our exploration, as I mentioned, at the Hottenvara licence. Hottenvara is around 5 square kilometres of that 240 square kilometre land package, 2% of our total land holding. Our first drill hole was 1,100 metres. We've drilled since 3 deep holes, and we've now drilled around 15,000 metres in total at the Hottenvara licence. And what we've seen so far from our drilling is that we've seen exceptional vertical continuity. Initially, the drilling that had been done by Outokumpu all ended around 250 metres, and it all ended in mineralisation. Our first hole drilled through that down to 1,100 metres, and we saw disseminated nickel mineralisation continuing at depth. In addition, we've run recently at the beginning of the year, we ran a UAV mag survey across the whole belt. What we had previously was the Geological Survey of Finland mag survey that had been undertaken, relatively low resolution, but it gave us a good idea of what we were dealing with. Since then, we've done the mag survey across the whole belt, and we've seen that there's extensive potential for district scale lateral continuity across the belt, around 35 kilometres of potential strikes throughout the belt. We've identified in the first 6 months before we started drilling numerous EM targets, which is what we've been testing this year. And then as we've been drilling this year, we've also been continuing to do downhole EM across the drilling as well. And as I mentioned previously, we were looking to do an update of the current resource by the end of the year. Great part of the world. There's a photo there of our drill rig. Caddy Drilling is our drilling contractor. They are by far the best in Finland. They have been operating, when I mentioned the 6 rigs that have been going 6 years non-stop at Sakatti, that was Caddy Drilling that were doing that. It's pretty well built, their company, and they're applying the same process and same rigs. In fact, the rig that we've got is their newest rig in their fleet. Have done a fantastic job for us. So why Europe? As we mentioned in the introduction, I was previously working for a French bank, had a bit of an idea of what was going on in Europe, and when this project sort of came across my way, it was pretty compelling when you start looking at what's happening especially in the Nordic region. There's a lot of gigafactories going on. Pre-IRA, Europe was set to become the second largest battery manufacturing hub outside of China. Around 20% of all the gigafactories that are committed to be built are actually in the Nordic region as well. And in addition to that, there are only 2 nickel mines operating in Europe. Both of them are in Finland, and all the nickel refining and smelting capacity in Europe is in Finland or Norway. So great opportunity. The 2 operating nickel mines, one is the Kevitsa mine, as I mentioned. The other one is Terrafame's Talvivaara mine, not far away on the eastern side of Finland. Importantly, I think, and what was compelling for me is the fact that there's the full value chain that already exists, and there's a demand there coming. There's a market that's ready to take product. So the potential for Pulu. This map here that we're showing is the original GTK lower resolution, so Geological Survey of Finland lower resolution mag survey that was undertaken. We had mapped what we call the Merton-Vara Formation amongst that. And we then also, in addition to the 10,000 metres that had been drilled by Outokumpu back in the 80s and 90s, GTK had also drilled another 6,000 metres. We got access to all that data and we were able to identify that there's near-surface disseminated nickel mineralisation throughout that belt around the mag highs that were identified through the GTK survey. That gave us a lot of excitement about the fact that there's 35 kilometres of potential mineralised strike exists. And then when I show you a map in a minute about the mag survey, the high resolution mag survey that we've undertaken recently, you can just see how excited we've got about the potential in this belt. But overall, as you can see in the bottom of this image, the Hottenvara exploration area in pink is where our mineral resource estimate sits. So 2% again of the overall land package, and already 278,000 tonnes of contained nickel. Again, just drawing a line in the sand about what we think is potential here. Oops. To put it in perspective, a little cheeky slide, but just give you some idea about the sort of scale that we're talking about here. The green area in this V formation that we're talking about, this is the Merton-Vara Formation that I mentioned. This is the ultramafic formation that's been mapped by a geological survey. The blue blobs in that image there are where there's been drilling done before. And I mentioned the Hottenvara licence where we've already got the maiden resource, and since then we've drilled another 15,000 metres in addition to that. So the Hottenvara prospect, this sits right down the very bottom of the Pulu project. That was our first granted licence, 5 square kilometres. That mineral resource estimate was already put out 6 weeks after listing. It starts at surface and it carries on down to around 250 metres, or 80% of it is contained within the first 250 metres. What we're looking for is both near-surface disseminated nickel mineralisation. We've got the strategy about potentially building out that resource and a very large near-surface disseminated nickel deposit, but also the game changer will be the Sakatti style, higher grade massive sulphides. We're getting lots of indications of that. Downhole EM, geophysics is all going to be critical in being able to vector in on where those zones will sit. You can see on that image there, you've got the red outlines is where the drilling has been done, or sorry, where the mineral resource estimate was done previously, and we've been testing areas that step out from there. So we have no doubt that we'll be able to build out that resource. Just an indication of some of the historical drilling. So I should mention we've drilled 15,000 metres. We have just recently concluded that drilling, that first phase of the first maiden drilling campaign. Assay results pending. We've released assays on 8 holes. We've drilled 28, so there's a lot of news flow coming. This data that I've got here is based on the historical drilling that was done by Outokumpu. What we knew existed was on the left-hand side of the column was the near-surface disseminated nickel. That was in the reports. We then were able to get access to all that drill core. In Finland, after 5 years, if you're not using it, it's got to go into a GTK core library. We got access to that drill core. We were able to relog and re-assay all of that drill core. It confirmed what the reports were saying. Very wide intersections of disseminated, so 125 metres at 0.25, 0.27% nickel. What the reports didn't say was that there was these potential, or there were these massive sulphide intersections as well. So we had up to 9% nickel in some of those intersections, narrow, but it got us pretty excited that there's massive sulphide potential here. Importantly then as well, we've then undertaken initial MET test work. That MET test work confirmed that between 83 and 94% of the nickel that was sampled sits in sulphides, which is critical, obviously, from a flotation perspective. Also had great characteristics in relation to arsenic, very low arsenic, very coarse grain. So we're now kicking off our MET test work campaign, as I said, to do more detailed flotation test work, so we'll get those results out by the end of the year. So the Hottenvara prospect, the drilling campaign, it's probably can't see it that well in here. It's on our website. Also come and see us in the booth. But we have kicked off the campaign. I guess initially the campaign was to test, first of all, that the conditions were right for forming a system of disseminated nickel and high-grade massive sulphide system. The first hole was 1,100 metres. Within the first few holes that we drilled, we were able to confirm that those conditions existed. And we were using a lot of our original geophysics work that we'd done in the first 6 months before we started drilling to then test EM targets. So we've continued on with the strategy of drilling out the maiden resource and building that, but also starting to test these higher grade zones using EM as a target, geophysics, sorry, as a targeting tool. One of our first holes, the third hole, was 30 metres of semi-massive and net textured sulfides. And then recently, you just see we announced visual disseminated nickel sulfides potential in a step-out hole that was 500 metres away from the original mineral resource estimate. So that outline area, which we're calling the Houghton-Sargeau magnetic anomaly, that sits to the east of the existing resource, and all still contained within the Houghton-Vara licence that we have. That mag anomaly, which is about 2 kilometres or 1.6 kilometres long, has never been drilled before, so it was a good opportunity for us to put a hole in there, see what we could potentially uncover, and it's proven up that theory that there's potentially nickel there. So we're waiting on those results, but it's looking pretty interesting. So the growth potential, so this is just that same image, the mag image that we did earlier on this year from the UAV mag, but to the east, further to the east, in another tenement to the east of the Houghton-Vara licence, we identified another 2.6 kilometre mag anomaly. And overall, we've identified a total of at least nine lookalike mag anomalies that are as big as, if not bigger than, the Houghton-Vara licence. So we've got a really big system here. We've got a big project. We're going to be spending a lot of time here drilling out not only the Houghton-Vara licence area, but now as we get the opportunity to move up the belt, we can start looking at some of those other areas as well. This is the entire Pulu project and the mag survey that we flew at the beginning of the year, 269 square kilometres that we flew. Fantastic data that we've got. We're now doing a lot of work around processing the data that we've collected. So the 15,000 metres assay results coming through, the downhole EM data that we've got, the mag data that we've now got, it's all allowing us to take a pause, rebuild the geological model, reset for our targeting for next year, and then go again in January. That's our plan at the moment. So as I mentioned, we had 9 new prospective magnetic anomalies that were identified throughout the belt, and these are categorised as either ultramafic cumulates or chromatic flow facies, which we're still needing to define and working on at the moment. And then finally, as I mentioned, we've just had this exploration licence, the Houghton-Vara licence, granted. Our capital structure, we listed at 25 cents. We have traded up as high as 43 cents and as low as 17.5, I think, the last couple of days. We've been able to hold up okay compared to some others, I suppose. We've got 5.4 million cash in the bank. Our EV is 17 million. It's pretty low considering the potential in situ value already sitting from that nickel resource. We've got a very supportive shareholder base. The company that owns the project originally is our main shareholder, as well as a group of investors, private equity group out of Hong Kong called Starboard Global, and then management. We've all got plenty of skin on the game. This is about making a company. Our plan is to build a business here, and we're not going to just stop at the Pulu project, but we believe that's a good starting point, and it's going to give us a chance to really build a business around that. So perhaps before we get into the key investment takeaways, the final point around the BHP Explore program, there were 250 companies that applied to the BHP Explore program, and there were 7 that were selected. We were very encouraged by the fact that BHP, after doing their initial due diligence on us, were very keen to have us involved in the program. Each of the companies involved in the program got $500,000 US as a grant. So non-equity, BHP don't have any shares in Nordic Nickel. That gave us a lot of encouragement to go on with our drilling campaign and push forward with doing a couple of deeper holes, which we did, and as I said, test the system. The program ended at the end of June, and now we're in ongoing discussions with BHP of what the potential future could look like. They're certainly very interested in what this belt could mean. They haven't operated in that area before, but they've done their due diligence now. They've had 6 months looking at us. I think they can see the huge strategic advantage that's happening in this part of the world as well. So overall, just in summary, we've got a maiden resource that was 133 million tonnes for 278,000 tonnes of contained nickel, 12,500 tonnes of cobalt. Market cap, $25 million. EV, 17 million. We've just drilled another 15,000 metres in addition to that resource that was drilled historically, the 10,000 metres. We're operating in a Tier 1 jurisdiction. We have rights over 515 square kilometres. we believe we're onto a global nickel mining camp here. The maiden resource area is less than 2% of our overall land holding. We're targeting near surface disseminated nickel. That's just going to keep growing. Everywhere we drill, we're seeing more of that. But the big game changer is going to be the high-grade massive sulfides, and we feel like we're zeroing in on that. We were selected in the BHP Explorer program, and what we're chasing is Sakatti-style analogues. Thank you.